Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. All I'm saying, next time, bring the evidence. All you do, you come here, corruption. Just here. Next time you come here, bring your stuff. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about you in 2024, December, saying there's corruption. Bring it.
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right. Unlike the right that someone has, all of our rights exist in context.
What's the context of second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Hi there, welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. We're coming to you from one of the most iconic places in the history of the whole of Guyana, the Botanical Gardens. Thanks for being with us. The backdrop is the Botanical Gardens. If the cameraman could have panned the camera, you would have seen the Forbes Burnham Mausoleum. We're right close to the Forbes Burnham Mausoleum. Anyway, thanks for being with us. The second week of June, we completed 3 years of this program. And one of the persons of about 7 or 8 people that have made this program possible is Joel Bhagwadin. He's appeared on this program 6-7 times, always responded favorably to our invitation. Joel, could you come on the program? There's no more appropriate time than to have Joel Bhagwadin on the program because we're 2 months away from a general elections. So once again, thanks Leonard Craig for being with us. And as you know, our guest this evening is financial analyst and political/economic commentator Joel Bhagwadin. Joel, thanks for being here. It's election season, but I want to engage you and Leonard Craig using simple linguistics, simple grammar about this all-profit thing. It's in the air and nobody has been able, nobody is consistently going after this fiction that the Exxon is earning so much. One of the persons who has unlimited access to the Starbook News is Christopher Ram. And Christopher Ram keep pushing this thing. Until on Father's Day, we interviewed Christopher Ram and Leonard Craig took him on with this thing about Exxon earning 4 times more than what Guyana is getting. And then there's a document that Craig said Ram did not read properly. And I'm sure you were familiar, you looked at the Ram interview, I'm sure you're familiar with Ram. Well, it's your duty to read everything Ram writes because you're a financial analyst. So, can you and Leonard Craig talk about this excessive profit going into the sky, which, according to Craig, is not so?
Well, before we engage in that discussion, I thought you originally wanted Christopher Ram and myself to be on the same program or to share the same program.
Let me intercept you there. I asked Ram to be on the panel with you. His position was, I'd like to be in a panel, but not with Joel Bhagwadin. You can, Kit Nascimento said, I can publicly say it, he will be on a panel with anyone, but not Christopher Ram. So Ram doesn't want you, Nascimento doesn't want Ram. I think that's unfortunate because with you and Ram sitting together, we could have had a ventilation of these either facts or fictions. But Joel, go on.
So I was intentionally, I saw all of the debates. I did something briefly on the oil profits, which was not covered fully in mainstream media, but it was covered in other online media platforms and other television programs. I've been avoiding dealing with this matter for one reason only, and that is because I don't want to be doing default PR for Exxon. However, this thing has become an intense debate and they're dragging the government into it and we're in the political season. So let me answer the question. Leonard is correct that the profit that the oil companies effectively earn is not excessive. And Christopher Ram and others, the other group from the OGGN who call themselves oil exports, they are not reading the financial statements properly. They are not analyzing the financial statements properly. The financial statements are prepared in accordance with a reporting convention. That convention is called the International Financial Reporting Standard. However, the profit share arrangement and royalty arrangement between the government of Guyana and the oil companies, that is governed by a separate framework, which is the Petroleum Agreement. And that framework prescribes that the oil companies are allowed to take up to 75% in cost recovery because they have to recoup their costs that they invested at the beginning to develop the project, to develop the resources and extract it from beneath the surface of the ocean. And the 50th split. So that it's two separate frameworks. So the financial statements that are filed, submitted to the tax authorities and submitted vis-a-vis their annual returns, that financial statement is not prepared in accordance with the agreement. It's two different conventions. So that's the first thing. And Christopher Ram of Lal Bachchan Christopher Ram ought to know this because he is not a newcomer. He knows these conventions well. He's a practicing and an accomplished accountant and auditor in his field. So that's the first thing. The second thing now with respect to the profit. If you analyze the profit, when you analyze the profit, you will recognize that the oil companies are not taking back a cent of their profit to the parent company. If you do what is called a cash flow analysis, if you analyze their cash flow statement, you would see that their net cash flow position is in the negative, which simply means they're reinvesting all of their profits that they earn into the Stabroek block to develop new projects, and that's how we could sustain that momentum. And in the Stabroek block, we still have several other projects. By 2030, we are 600 or 700,000 barrels per day. We still have maybe 3 or 4 other projects to come on stream between now, 2025 and 2030. So all the profits that they make in Guyana goes back into the Stabroek block to developing those future projects. And that is the truth. That is what the analysis would show you, which they are not doing. So it is a fallacy. It is incorrect to say that oil companies are walking away with $10 billion. That is not true, right? And when you apply the formula, the profit share works out to 12.5% of gross revenue, because 75% is the cost recovery. That's the ceiling. So the profit share between the oil companies is really 25% of gross revenue. So half of 25 is 12.5% plus the 2% royalties. So effectively, the government of Guyana is collecting more money up front than the oil companies. the oil company's share, which is just about 10.5% of gross revenue, which is less than our 40.5% of gross revenue, they take all of that and reinvest it, right? In the outer years when they finish developing all the other projects in the pipeline, and when they recover those costs, and based on our economies of scale and all of that, based on our very low break-even cost, our profit share will increase, or our earnings from the sector will increase from 14.5% of revenue to about 30% of revenue, all things being equal.
But Joel, I noticed something, and you want to believe these people are intellectually dishonest and politically dishonest. They never respond to the things you write, and clarifications every week that Craig says on the Freddie Kissoon show.
There's a reason why they do that.
But I mean, they just, because they're afraid to be exposed.
Not only that, the reason, and this is precisely why Christopher Ram does not want to engage me publicly, is because they see me, they're seasoned in their field, they've been around a long time, they're far more senior to me. I don't want to say they're old or elderly, so I'm trying to find a proper term to put it. They're far more senior than me in this sphere that they're operating and providing public commentaries and analysis as they think they're doing. And so that's the reason why they don't want to engage me. They see me as they don't want to give me prominence. Yeah. They don't want to give prominence to me by addressing me directly. But that doesn't, negate what I do. That doesn't negate what I do. So that's the reason why they do.
But that has to be, that there's a word to describe that. I don't know if it's pretentiousness but you can't be debating.
It's arrogant.
You can't be debating a country's economic direction in which you point into specific resource or a specific investment, and you're fallaciously outlining an argument, and when people point out the fallacy of your argument, you just completely ignore them. Leonard, you have done a good interview with Christopher Ram about this, so much profit Christopher Ram is saying. You heard what Joel just said?
Yeah. Joel is exactly accurate. But I'd just like to add a little. Just for the viewers to understand, and I'm making this as basic as possible. There are three broad categories under which the expense of an oil company in Guyana incur. Three broad categories. One, they spend money for exploration. In other words, and I said this on a program before and I just want to repeat, if they had explored for oil and found nothing, they dug and got dry wells, they would have had to pick up the traps, pack up and leave Guyana with zero. And then on their balance sheet, which Joel is speaking about the International Convention for Accounting, on their balance sheet, they had to write that off as sunk cost. Right, sunken costs, or with whatever term. I was trying to use a more simpler term for the people who are not accounting thing.
In simple terms, it's a loss.
Right.
Invested, like, if you're to quantify the pre-oil, the pre-19, from the pre-99, the pre-2016, right?
2016, right.
From the exploration cost from 1999 up to 2015 was over $460 million US dollars.
Right.
460 million.
And let's assume they did not find oil in, I think they declared finding oil in 2015. 2015.
May
If they did not find oil in 2015 and they had a shareholders meeting back in Texas, and the shareholders said, you've spent X amount of years in Guyana, we don't want to continue, you have not found anything, we don't want to continue. They would have had to take all their belongings, go back to Texas and write that off on their books as a loss, that they didn't make any money. But the agreement says, if perchance you find oil, then you can get back that money because now we find oil. It's like a poor man taking a lawyer. He got this big case he wants to do, but he don't have money. A case like that will cost 20s of millions of dollars. And he say, man, do the case for me. And the lawyer gonna say, my fees are $2 million. My fee is $2 million. But if I take this case for you, we gotta bust this thing down the middle. The man gonna gotta say, yeah, buddy, because what are the options? I go away with zero, or I take the 50%. And basically that is what happens. So 3 categories of costs: the exploration, capital acquisition costs, because what you need to know that all the FPSOs and all of that, if Exxon was to leave Guyana today, all of their assets would belong to the government of Guyana. All of their immovable assets will belong to the government of Guyana. And the third cost is your everyday cost for bringing up the oil on an everyday basis. And all of that have to be reflected in their balance sheet or in their accounts that they deduct every day. Now the years that gone, they would have had to be minusing that from their books, and their shareholders looking at it saying, you're depleting our funds. You find oil, you got to start replacing that little by little, and you're taking that out the 75%. You're also taking out the cost for the FPSOs out of the 75%, and the daily bringing up the oil got to come out from the 75% as well. So when those costs that they faced back in those years were already accounted for on the books, they cannot now go and take these books. They're talking about the accounting costs, not the production sharing agreement, the accounting costs. You can't then come and write it on the books now as if now it's 2014, 2012, 2011. That was already written off on the book, and that was declared profit for the year, and it showed that deep hole in the accounts of Exxon. Now they're getting a chance to put back a little. And their accounting costs now will show as though they're having a big intake. But if you were to go back and throw it back, Exxon would be making less than zero. I want people to understand that. They would have been in the negative. They are in the positive because you have to do accounts for this year and next year and the other year and the other year, and it may show as if they make a huge profit. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, going back to 1999 when the original agreement was signed, Exxon is not really making a profit. I hope,
Yeah,
Joel.
you basically interpreted what I already explained with the cash flow analysis. The
Right.
cash flow analysis shows they're in the negative, but that is because they're taking all of the profit that they earned here, year over year, and redeploying it, recovering costs plus redeploying it, reinvesting it, or applying it back into the developing the future developments. And the negative because there is still a shortfall, so they still have to inject money.
Yeah.
Via equity financing from the parent company. So they are still so technically the analysis would show you that Exxon is not taking away profit as yet from Ghana. They're not repatriating profit as yet from Ghana. They are still injecting, the parent companies are still injecting more capital into the market to develop the future projects.
And Christopher Ram doesn't know this.
He knows what he has an agenda.
I am sure that he does, because I cannot fathom that he doesn't understand this. I am trained as an economist, not as an accountant, and if I could understand that, I don't see why Christopher Ram can't.
Is it his political political agenda?
Absolutely.
And the same people in New York calling themselves the governance network.
Correct. They have
The lady
they
in
have a
British,
very
the lady in British Columbia. Yeah.
they have a very hostile agenda against this government in particular. So so we're not dealing with facts and
Yeah, I know-
figures,
I know- I
we're
know-
not dealing with scholarship. in
I know
terms of
Janet
argument.
Bulkan. I know Janet Bulkan is just irrationally anti-government. And guess what is one of the strategies and perhaps the only game in town for them? Use the imperialists have come, the Americans have come, and they're owning Guyana. That is the only game in town for them. And we have Leonard Craig, that could explain this thing. Look, Joel, we're in the election season. 2 months to go and a couple days left in June. I find the Azruddin Mohamed entry into politics surreal, given who he is. This playboy that never walked a day and spent his father billions. I mean, what is Guyana coming to?
Well, there's a positive connotation to that.
Tell me.
And a negative connotation. The positive connotation is that the fact that we could have a character
Like that.
like that
It's testimony to our
is
democracy.
testimony to our democracy and testimony to that, to the fact that we're a free country. You want to ask another question?
Well, you said there are two dimensions there, the positive
Well, I'm,
and the
waiting,
negative.
I'm giving you an opportunity to ask specific questions.
But I'm asking you,
I don't want to-
what is the negative? Well, the negative, you can just write a book on it.
Yeah,
This guy seriously wants to be a presidential candidate? What I know of him, what you see of him? Irresponsible playboy that never walked a day in his life, running around with his father billions, and he just decided. I mean, when you compare him, the 28 parties submitted symbols. And I'm sure if you go through the list, those people have been around, they've owned a business, they've worked in the public service. Where has Azruddin Mohamed worked?
We have to see it and we have to look at it for what it is.
And what it is, Joel?
And what it is that is simply that he is playing completely outside of his league. Completely outside of his league, but that's a different matter. Let us deal with the face value of what it is. And the face value of what it is that this guy, this entity, the enterprise that he belongs to, which is the family enterprise. It is public knowledge that this family enterprise has been the subject of international, mainly by the US, investigation for a long period of time, since before 2020, since before 2015, for a long, and there are documentaries and so on about it. So for a long time, they have been under the radar for those very activities for which they have been the subject of OFAC sanctions. They've been sanctioned, and this is public knowledge. They've been sanctioned by OFAC, which is an arm of the US state apparatus, the US authority, for smuggling, gold smuggling, corruption and money laundering. That is what the sanction is about. According to the US, they're claiming that they have solid evidence, they have a mountain of compelling evidence that this guy over a period of time evaded about 15 million US dollars. That's $10 billion in taxes from smuggling, from gold smuggling activities that he's been engaged in for years. So they knew for many years, they have been the subject of radar of this nature, which means that they knew that at some point in the future, at some point in time, what happened to them will happen They knew that. They knew that they were going to be sanctioned. And so what this fella has been doing in anticipation of that, he started a few years before that. He
Sharing
started
out
to
things,
build.
sharing.
He started to
Share what goodies.
in an attempt to build social capital. In an attempt to build social capital, and that is what he's been doing. That is not humanitarian work. Humanitarian work you don't politicize and you don't publicize. So don't confuse humanitarian work with corporate social responsibility or ESG and with a political agenda, political vendetta, or towards a political goal. And so they knew all along that this is at some point in time will come, and so he started to build social capital, going about the place and doing what he's been doing, building houses for people. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. In terms of helping those people, I'm not against that. That's good. But his intent was not
There was an ulterior motive.
His intent
There was an ulterior motive.
was not genuine, that he genuinely cares for these people.
It's a means to an
Yes,
end.
it's correct. It's a means to an end. You would recall, I want to point out certain things to connect. You would recall that he had hired this entity,
that's
the
what exactly what I was
enterprise
going
had
to
hired
say. Yeah.
a private
Lobbyist.
investigator, a private lobbyist group formed, and this individual who is a former FBI, that conducted some so-called investigation of his company
And give it to the
give him a
treasury.
clean, to say that his books are clean, etc. To that, this was before the sanction, which is indicative
And years
of what
before
I said.
too.
They knew.
Yeah.
They knew. So they were, for a long period of time before the sanction came, a long period of time before 2015 and before 2020, they were actively trying to mitigate this, because they knew this same lobbyist firm was hired by the government of Guyana, and there is a press conference to this effect, the vice president, where this was mentioned publicly. The same lobbying firm, the retired FBI investigator or expert or whatever they call themselves, that gave his entity a clean book and was lobbying for him to the US in Washington. That same firm was, I can't remember the specifics, but that same firm was contracted by the government of Guyana, and the government of Guyana terminated that contract immediately, with immediate effect, when they found out that he was also the firm to which that US person, the investigator, was attached to. When they found out that the same firm, doing work for the government of Guyana, doing work for a private entity. The vice president is on record at one of his press conferences, you could Google it and get it, where he made that disclosure publicly, that this firm has been terminated by the government of Guyana. Now what does that tell you? I could get anybody, I could be involved in anybody who is running a criminal enterprise or is involved in illegal activities, and they're slushed with money gained from illicit means, from money laundering and tax evasion. They could pay anybody to say my books are clean. So that is the beginning of it. That backdrop is important. Fast forward to now today, running for election. He obviously, when it comes to his credentials, and when I say credentials, I'm not referring to any sort of academic training or academic qualification.
No, he hasn't got that.
I'm speaking about his credentials in terms of does he have the capability to run a country? He doesn't. When you listen to this guy speak, he cannot speak without a script. And even the people who write the script for him, can't even
write it properly.
construct a proper
Sentence.
not sentence. They can't
Paragraph.
even construct a proper policy statement.
Okay.
They can't even conduct a proper analysis or assessment of a policy
I
for
am-
him to song right. They can't.
We're going to come to that. Leonard, you have a question for Joel?
So wait, I'm not done. So he doesn't have the credential in terms of the capability to lead and govern a country. You will never see him speaking on the top of his head on policy issues, on governance issues, on diplomatic issues, on border issues. You would never see him doing that, and he will never.
I don't think he
and
knows
if-
anything
and
about
he
those
knows
things.
nothing.
Some-
And if you think
Somebody
if you
told
think-
him to get involved.
if you think you will see him having rallies as is customary, as is traditional in the campaign season, there will be none of that. There will be none of that. Why? Because he has to conceal himself, because he knows
That
what
he will
his
be
limitations-
exposed.
He knows what
So
his
he won't
limitations-
have
so
a
he
de-
has to
he won't have a
conceal.
debate with other contenders.
Not at all.
You have a question for Joel?
No, I just want to add some information with respect to the lobbyist forum. The US has started to deny the family or members of the family and close business associate had started to deny them visa like about 2 years ahead of the sanction. And they were wondering why we ain't getting visa. And so they hired the firm to go to Washington and literally meet politicians. And you know what some of the lobbyists, the larger lobbyist firms in the US do. They would give campaign contributions.
Right.
And in exchange for campaign contribution, you ask that such and such policy
Right.
be implemented, and that is the highest form of corruption in U.S. politics, actually.
Correct. That's why that's also part of the reasons why they were sacked.
Right, and so they spent a lot of money pursuing that, and that was well ahead of the sanctions.
Joel, it's my duty to read everything in the newspapers. That's my job. You describe Nigel Hughes as a fake sophisticate. What are you referring to? I know Priya Manichan on this show 3 years ago, and then she said it at an occasion where she was officiating government business. The accent thing. Why is he a fake sophisticate?
You're a political scientist. He is a fake sophisticate because he pretends to be sophisticated. He pretends to be sophisticated to compete with the one and only real sophisticated politician we have in this country, Bhagwadin. He pretends to be, or he wishes to be, as sophisticated. And so when he took over, when he hijacked the AFC, he presented himself
I got to depart from that word. I don't want Mr. Nigel Hughes to hijack.
No.
I want to disassociate
Well, I said
myself from
he.
that word.
I didn't say him. I didn't call his name.
He was elected as the AFC leader.
All right.
Don't want no libel.
Let's give him. If we're to take the narrative put out there by Sherrod Duncan, Sherrod Duncan implies that the party was hijacked by him.
This program position is that he was elected leader by the AFC.
However, whatever he did, he presented himself as though he has what it takes to rebrand the AFC and to win an election. As if he is this really, really sophisticated politician or sophisticated individual. In hindsight, from then to now, he has committed a series of elementary or fundamental mistakes. He has committed and suffered the consequences of very elementary mistakes in politics.
Leonard?
I on this program several times before, I did point out exactly what Joel has said, that Nigel has ambled his way around and has been fumbling from one mistake to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think that comes from the fact that the AFC has never had a type of doctrinaire political existence the way the PPP and PNC is, nor did they have what you call a comrade leader type of personality to look at. Now, the way the AFC was formed, neither Trotman...
There's a question coming.
No, just making a comment. I'm coming a question just now. Neither Trotman nor Ramjitan allowed each other to form that personality. And as you saw in my article, they would cut each other down from time to time. When one is being established, the next one, right? So AFC never benefited from that. And what they needed to benefit from to keep AFC going was relationships. And they bungled that as well. Nigel Hughes came in, had an opportunity, he bungled that as well. Now to my question. Sorry to be so long-winded. Do you see...
That's a preamble to your question.
Do you see the AFC regaining its glory days like as it had in 2006, 2011, like being able to impact the voting public in a similar manner?
Not at all. Absolutely not. And why do I think so? Let's examine his mistakes, his political mistakes. And therein lies, listen, today you talk about the voting and the youths, right? Today, almost every field in academia, students attending university again are pursuing their academics. We do some bit of political science and so on. So the youngsters, the young voting population, they are not naive about politics. They're not naive, and they're intelligent enough, they're smart enough to be able to identify these fundamental errors. And once a large segment of the voting population recognize these very elementary things you're very incompetent in executing, then I can't place my confidence in you to give you a vote. Therefore, they will not have that impact. So let's look at some of these mistakes. When he came in, he coined the term, or maybe he didn't coin. He created this formula of a consensus president.
You know, he came in with the slogan, "Better must come."
No, but not better must come. He came in with this thing. He started this movement about consensus presidential candidate, and we know where he was going with that. He wanted to get the leader of the opposition, which is Aubrey Norton. He thought that he would have been able to remove Aubrey Norton and become the presidential. He thought he is so likable. He thought that he was so likable that and he even disparaged the man, that you're not electable, and the man is not electable, and all sorts of things, right? And then we saw what happened. We saw how that played out. It never happened because Aubrey Norton, who, credit to him, is a far more seasoned and a far more more competent politician, was able to navigate that, overcome that, and ensure that Nigel Hughes never succeeded Instead, what happened? Aubrey Norton took away the youngest folks that he had.
Three of them.
Aubrey Norton took away his people, weakening his party. So that's the biggest. Then the other one, the other big mistake that he made was his dishonesty.
No.
No, the dishonesty which was proven about his contract. He came out and said,
I'm unhappy with that
he
word.
came out and said, he admitted that he has a contract, his firm has a contract with Exxon. So that raises the question of conflict of interest. You're now the leader of a political party. Then he backpedaled from that and said, no, I'm not the attorney for Exxon. There is another partner to my firm, another partner in the firm that represents Exxon. He has never represented Exxon. And then the very next day, a video recording surfaced on YouTube where he was representing Exxon in a matter at the Caribbean Court of Justice. So there is a consistent pattern of dishonesty, and that
No, please use another word.
There is a consistent pattern of
not being forthright.
Disingenuous.
Okay.
Disingenuous, which is a sophisticated word that means dishonest.
No, please don't use that word.
So we talk about how he tried to take over the leadership. That failed. Exxon and his conflict of interest, he was exposed. That failed. Then he finally makes some announcement that he is withdrawn, and of course, whether no one believes that. What else? Then, from an internal source, and I won't disclose this internal source, an internal source within the party,
That's an internal source within the
AFC,
You got your contacts, you right?
said to me,
You heard that, Craig? You should have that source.
Said to me that this guy is delusional. He is delusional. He thinks he could win an election. He thinks that he could get a minority government. And this is what they think of him. And this is not ordinary.
He could win
an election
with a minority, or he could make the PPP into a minority.
First, he thinks he can win an election. Then he thinks, so when in their internal deliberation, I would imagine, that listen, you're delusional, and he come to that realization, okay, we can't win an election, but we can get a minority. Meaning making the PPP a minority. These people said this guy is totally delusional. Totally delusional. So I've given you three examples. There's his party under his leadership is in a total chaos, total disarray, total mess. They can't find their way. They can't find their identity. They're stealing people's intellectual work right now.
Joel, you got to be careful.
This is a matter in the public domain. There is an allegation.
This program rejects that. This program rejects that statement.
There is an allegation by a young lady who says she was engaged by.
Well, whatever, we reject the statement that Nigel uses stealing
I'm
intellectual property.
reframing the statement. There is an allegation out there by a young lady who claimed that she was engaged by the party sometime in February this year, and the party did not compensate her for her work or did not give her credit for her work, and they went ahead and used her work without her permission, and it has become, that's trending right now on social media.
What nature of work?
Some policy that she developed for youth engagement in education or something of that sort.
You have question, Craig?
We spoke about the Mohammeds briefly and then we moved off. But how do you visualize them faring in the election? Because when you look at it, at least the images we see on social media, a reasonable small crowd builds up when he is there. in various places, do you think that will translate into to votes?
What is seen, what is depicted on social media is oftentimes, or could oftentimes be, a mirage. Meaning it may not translate to reality at the ballot. Why do I say that? Let's take the video when he made the announcement on the Day of Independence. They thought, because the video got probably 100,000 likes or something, or views, that this was a groundswell thing, this was a big thing. But the reality, what happened 2 days after? The reality is, the whole country knew, and the whole country obviously I looked at it, so I am one of that person. But I'm not gonna vote, he's not gonna get my vote. Now, I can guarantee you there is at least 300,000 people, who, like me, may have looked at it and they will not vote, because you just want to look at the content of what and make your own assessment.
Just let me cut you quickly.
Now that's one.
Hold on. The manager of Pegasus told me, the owner of Pegasus told me, I have him on tape, in the 2020 election. He told me all the other third parties are lagging behind. And this is what he said to me. Freddie, do you know how much followers I have on Facebook? 200,000. That
How
is
much
what
he get to the election? He didn't even get
under 2,000.
He didn't even get the seat.
Under 2,000. Right. Yeah, go on.
Exactly. That's a classic example. He did not even get a seat. Now the picture is from the community engagement. You have a few persons coming out. Listen, everybody got issues, some sort of issue, whether personal or community related. No government or no system will be able to all at once, solve everybody's problem. Nowhere in the world. That is not to say we must discount those issues. So I'm not discounting that. But that aside, the people who are coming out, a lot of them, are people who are just coming out just to see, just to witness what is taking place.
He may be sharing out things.
That too. Some of them are coming out to see what he's bringing, what he's sharing out.
Goodies.
And then you have another set of people who come out and they are not party supporters or supporters of the PPP. They are mostly supporters of the APNO AFC.
Yeah, and I've always said APNO AFC has the greatest to lose if Mohamed makes sense at the ballot box.
Exactly.
But I see him as a young CN Sharma.
I think CN Sharma got a little bit more intelligence, man.
Might very well be.
But CN Sharma used to run a program every day. He makes mistake, but he could sit down, and he had guests from the university, whatever, and they talk. But unfortunately, we shouldn't say this, but we have to say this because this man wants to run our country. No human should dismiss. No human should be so contemptuous of someone who don't have education, of someone who don't speak proper. We shouldn't go down that road. But this man is saying, this man does know his limitation. This man is saying he wants to run this leading Caribbean country. But
listen. Notwithstanding all of that, you don't have to have a fancy education.
No, you don't. You don't have to.
You could be a farmer and run for president of this country.
Let me Lech Walesa from Poland was a dock worker and he became president.
This point very clearly. If his intentions were good,
Right.
if his intentions was really coming from a place not for his self-preservation
But here, the heart.
and for his own protection from
not from the heart.
from the problems he found himself in, not as a means to conceal or this view that you will be protected or that you will take control because you have committed allegedly some crimes or offended
But
another country or something like that.
Joel,
Let me say that.
Joel, but apart
I
from the
know
international
generally-
sanctions,
hold on,
there's some
generally
serious
speaking,
local
listen,
controversies
Freddie,
about
wait a
him.
minute. Generally speaking, any person who fits the description of not having a tertiary education, that does not prevent them.
No, and it
That
shouldn't.
does not and
Good.
should not.
And we should tell viewers that.
And I'm not
Right,
attributing that
Good.
to him that because he doesn't have a
Right,
tertiary
and this program
education,
is not
that he
going
should.
along that line.
Right.
Let's make that clear. We've got 6 minutes remaining. Leno,
Okay, so we have looked at the political landscape. We have talked a little about oil and gas and things like that. One accusation of the current government, Joel, is that they are spending too much money too fast on capital projects and capital works. What do you feel about that?
So let me give you one example.
And is it electioneering?
Okay. So listen to this. Listen to this fact. Listen to this piece of statistics, right? If you look at the capital spending on road infrastructure 15 years ago, and you look at it now, and you look at how much we're spending on building new road infrastructure now, in relation to the amount of new vehicles we're adding on the road. 15 years ago, every kilometer of new road constructed, we have imported or added about 7 new vehicles on the road. For every kilometer of new road constructed 15 years ago, we have added 7 new vehicles on the road based on our vehicle importation and registration data set. You know where that metric is now? Now, between 2020 and 2025, for every kilometer of new road constructed, we're adding 12 new vehicles on the road.
That's almost double.
So when you say we're spending too fast on infrastructure, the fact is that statistically speaking, we are spending too slow, because the rate at which people are purchasing new vehicles to drive on the road, we are not building the road fast enough.
Yeah.
And that's just using one example and one metric.
I said that only yesterday to a friend, that by the time that bridge is open, that bridge would be capacity. When it's open, it will be at its capacity.
Correct.
And in 3 to 4 years down the line, we need another bridge.
So the fact is, generally using that one metric, we are not spending fast. We're not investing in the capital infrastructure
Joel,
fast enough, based on the explosive growth and the rate at which people are earning more and getting higher paying jobs and more opportunities presenting.
I want to end on this. This is going to take us to program time. This is a question based on my belief, and I don't know how you're going to react to it, but whatever is your reaction, I'm not sure my position could be moved. I believe that there was a misstrategy on the part of the PPP leadership in just talking about Azruddin Mohamed. just talking and talking, the days, the weeks. And I think that made him known. My position, which I think is basic political strategy, was just to ignore him. And people would have asked 2 months, 3 months, who's this guy, Azruddin? I want to think that the PPP's strategy has catapulted him in the public's limelight. Joel?
You asking me?
Yeah. I'm asking you to comment on that question.
Some persons are of that view, like you, on one hand. On the other hand, as a politician, he has attacked the PPP. And the PPP has every right, the General Secretary said this, they have every right and they have a responsibility to responding to those attacks. Now, let me give you
he gave a video. He made a video on Independence Day. But it's out there that you could see before that they were making references to him.
No, I think it's a bit exaggerated because it's only of recent that the General Secretary of the party...
It was a deluge, man. It was a deluge, Joel, every week.
I think
you want to quickly say what you have to say, the operator signal.
No, I have nothing to say other than to say thank you for having me on the program, and it was always a pleasure to have these sort of...
Joel, it's always a pleasure to have you here. This is about the 7th to 8th time, and the election campaign is on, and I hope we have you back in another 3 weeks, months' time. There's so much to talk about the election campaign. We haven't touched Opry Norton, we haven't touched the PNC. We've got to do that, and there's a whole set of parties coming up. Thanks for being with us. Whatever is left on Friday evening, please enjoy it. This has been the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. We'd like to remind you of our disclaimer. The views expressed on this program are those of our guests and do not represent our beliefs. Once again, thanks for being with us. We have to thank our faithful guest, Joel Bhagwadin, for responding to our invitation. Have a very pleasant weekend. Catch you later. Bye-bye.